Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Imagine being one of the world's most successful athletes, fresh off completing the career Grand Slam, and being treated like you don't belong. This shocking true story about golf legend Rory Mcilroy will make you question everything you thought you knew about first impressions and the power of humility. It was an unusually quiet Tuesday in Manhattan. The prestigious Fifth Avenue glittered with luxury storefronts, each one more exclusive than the last. Inside one of America's most elite clothing establishments, staff were preparing for another day of catering to the ultra-wealthy. Meanwhile, Rory Mcilroy was savoring a rare moment of peace. Just days after his historic Masters victory at Augusta that completed his career Grand Slam, the golf superstar had slipped away from the media frenzy. Today, he wasn't looking for attention. Dressed in faded jeans, a simple gray hoodie, and a worn baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, he strolled down Fifth Avenue like any other tourist. What most people didn't know, what even the sports media hadn't yet reported, was that Rory's victory had coincided with another major milestone. The Northern Irishman had recently finalized a deal to become the majority investor in one of America's most prestigious luxury retail chains. It was a business decision he'd kept private, planning to announce it only after properly touring several locations. As Rory pushed open the heavy glass door of the flagship store, the security guard barely glanced up. No red carpet was rolled out. No whispers of recognition spread through the store. For once, the man whose face had been splashed across sports pages worldwide was just another customer, and it felt refreshing until it didn't. Rory moved quietly through the meticulously arranged displays, occasionally touching the fine fabrics with the gentle precision that had earned him millions in prize money. But something shifted in the atmosphere. He noticed the sideways glances, the subtle repositioning of security staff, the way associates suddenly became engrossed in refolding already perfect stacks of clothing. Little did they know, the man they were watching so suspiciously was now signing their paychecks. And what happened next would change everything about this luxury brand forever. The tension in the air grew thicker with each step Rory took through the store. A young sales associate whispered something to her colleague, both stealing glances in his direction. Rory had faced pressure on the world's biggest golf stages, stared down Tiger Woods on Sunday at major championships, but somehow this scrutiny felt different, more personal, more judgmental. He paused to examine an exquisitely tailored jacket, running his fingers over the stitching with the same focus he applied to reading the greens at Augusta. That's when the store manager appeared, a tall, impeccably dressed man with a sharp jawline and cold eyes that seemed to calculate Rory's worth based solely on his casual attire. "Can I help you find something?" The manager's tone made the question sound more like an accusation. His smile never reached his eyes as he positioned himself between Rory and the luxury item. "Just browsing," Rory replied, with the polite restraint that had made him a fan favorite worldwide. "This jacket has incredible craftsmanship." The manager's eyebrow arched. "Yes, it's one of our finest pieces, handmade in Italy." He paused deliberately. "It's priced at $12,400. The emphasis on the price hung in the air, a clear message that perhaps this wasn't the place for someone dressed like Rory. But instead of taking offense, Rory simply nodded appreciatively. "The stitching is remarkable," he commented, genuinely impressed. Something in the manager's expression hardened. He wasn't used to people in hoodies discussing Italian craftsmanship. His prejudice was as visible as the designer logo emblazoned across his own suit jacket. "Perhaps," the manager said, voice dripping with condescension, "you might be more comfortable at one of our more accessible competitors? We tend to cater to a certain clientele here." The words landed like a slap. A couple nearby pretended not to listen, but their discomfort was palpable. A younger sales associate looked mortified, clearly sensing the injustice unfolding. Rory stood perfectly still, the way he did before a crucial putt. He'd faced doubters his entire career, people who said he was too young, too emotional, too inconsistent, but being deemed unworthy based on his clothes was a new experience. "And what clientele would that be?" Rory asked quietly. The manager's smile tightened. "People who appreciate true luxury and can comfortably afford it." I wouldn't want you to waste your time." Every word was carefully chosen to humiliate without being explicitly offensive. It was the kind of calculated insult that gave the perpetrator plausible deniability while leaving the target feeling diminished. For a moment, Rory considered revealing his identity. It would be so easy to watch the color drain from this arrogant man's face, but something stopped him, something more powerful than the temporary satisfaction of embarrassing this man. Instead, Rory carefully returned the jacket to its display. "Thank you for your concern," he said, voice steady. "I appreciate your candor." With dignity that champions are made of, Rory turned and walked toward the exit. The young associate who had witnessed everything locked eyes with him briefly, her apologetic expression conveying what words couldn't. As the heavy door closed behind him, Rory didn't feel anger. Instead, a calm resolution formed in his mind. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "James," he said to his business manager, "I think we need to move up our meeting at the Fifth Avenue location. How quickly can you get here with the paperwork?" The manager would soon learn that appearances can be deceiving, but Rory McIlroy was about to teach a lesson far more valuable than that. 45 minutes. That's how long it took for Rory McIlroy to return to the store that had deemed him unworthy. Only this time, he wasn't alone. The glass doors swung open to admit Rory, still in the same casual attire, accompanied by 3 people in immaculate business suits. The contrast was immediate and striking. At the center of this professional entourage was the same man who had been subtly pushed out less than an hour ago. The floor staff froze. The same manager who had delivered the cutting remarks was now helping a wealthy-looking couple. His back was to the entrance, unaware of the seismic shift about to rock his world. James, Rory's business manager, stepped forward first. "We're here to see the store manager," he announced, voice carrying across the showroom floor. The manager turned, customer service smile fixed in place, until his gaze landed on Rory standing confidently at the center of the group. For a split second, recognition flickered across his face. Not of Rory, the golf superstar, but of the undesirable customer he'd dismissed earlier. "How can I help you?" he asked, voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. James extended a business. "James Watkins, Chief Operations Officer for McIlroy Enterprises. We're here for the ownership transition inspection." The manager accepted the card automatically, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror as he read the name. His eyes darted to Rory, then back to the card. "I don't understand," he stammered, color draining from his face. Rory stepped forward, extending his hand with the same sportsmanship he showed opponents on the 18th green. "Rory McIlroy, as of last Friday, majority owner of luxury unlimited brands, including this flagship store." The silence that descended was deafening. Several customers had stopped to watch the unfolding drama. Staff members exchanged glances of disbelief. The young associate who had witnessed the earlier interaction covered her mouth in shock. The manager's hand trembled slightly as he shook Rory's. "Mr. McIlroy, I didn't recognize you earlier." "That much was clear," Rory replied, his tone professional rather than accusatory. The third member of Rory's entourage, a sharp-eyed woman with a tablet, spoke up. "We'll need access to your back offices and staff records." The manager seemed to age years in seconds. "Of course, right away. And Mr. McIlroy, about earlier, I must apologize for the misunderstanding." Rory raised a hand, silencing the fumbling apology. "We'll discuss that privately. Right now, we have a store inspection to complete." As they moved toward the back offices, whispers erupted across the sales floor. The manager walked ahead, his previously commanding posture now diminished. Rory fell into step beside the young associate who had shown him kindness earlier. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Sarah, sir," she replied, eyes wide with disbelief. "Sarah, I'd appreciate it if you joined us for this meeting." Her surprise was evident. "Me? But I'm just a junior associate." Rory smiled, the warm, genuine smile that had won over golf fans worldwide. Sometimes the most valuable perspectives come from unexpected places, just like the most valuable people sometimes come in unexpected packages. As they disappeared into the back offices, the remaining staff exchanged looks of shock and apprehension. The store that had prided itself on judging people by appearances was about to undergo a transformation none of them could have anticipated. But the real lesson was just beginning. The next morning, every employee of the Fifth Avenue store received an unusual email: mandatory attendance for an all-staff meeting before opening hours. Speculation ran wild. Most assumed mass terminations were coming, retail's standard response to new ownership. At 8 a.m. sharp, they gathered in the main showroom, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The manager stood apart, his usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. His position seemed precarious after yesterday's revelation. When Rory Mcilroy walked in, this time in a perfectly tailored suit that would have impressed even the store's pickiest clients, he carried himself with the same measured composure that had defined his golf career. No flash, no unnecessary drama, just quiet, determined purpose. "Good morning, everyone," he began, voice carrying easily through the silent room. "I'm Rory Mcilroy, and as you may have heard, I recently acquired a majority stake in this company." He paused, scanning the room. "Yesterday, I experienced something in this store that I believe goes against everything luxury retail should represent." The manager stared at the floor, awaiting the axe to fall. "I was judged not by my character, but by my clothing," Rory continued. "And while that was unpleasant for me, I had the luxury of walking away knowing I owned the store." His expression turned more serious. "But what about the thousands of potential customers who receive similar treatment? They don't have that satisfaction. They just leave, carrying the weight of being made to feel less than." Sarah, the junior associate from yesterday, now stood near the front, her gaze steady as Rory spoke. "True luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about exceptional experiences for everyone who walks through those doors. The craftspeople who create these amazing products put their heart into every stitch. They deserve to have their work represented with the same care and respect." Rory walked toward the manager, who seemed to brace himself. But instead of confrontation, Rory simply said, "I don't believe in public humiliation. That solves nothing. I'd rather focus on transformation." Relief washed over the manager's face, followed quickly by confusion. "Starting today, we're implementing a new training program focused on inclusive excellence. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of appearance. The program will be mandatory for all staff, beginning with management." The shift in the room was palpable, fear giving way to cautious hope. "Sarah," Rory gestured to the young associate, "showed me something valuable yesterday, that kindness costs nothing but means everything. I'm pleased to announce she'll be leading our new customer experience initiative." Sarah's shock was evident as her colleagues turned to her with surprise and newfound respect. "And as for our current management," Rory continued, looking directly at the man who had humiliated him, "you have a choice. You can embrace this new direction and help lead it, or you can find another position better suited to your value. That decision is yours to make by the end of the week." The manager nodded stiffly, humbled, but offered a path to redemption. "This store will become the flagship for a new kind of luxury experience," Rory declared, "one where craftsmanship and human dignity share equal importance, where we judge the quality of our products, not the appearance of our customers." As he concluded the meeting, Rory approached Sarah. "Ready for your first challenge?" "I don't know if I'm qualified," she admitted honest. "Yesterday, when everyone else saw a hoodie, you saw a person," Rory replied. "That's the only qualification that mattered." As the staff dispersed with renewed purpose, something had fundamentally shifted. The same space that had been cold and intimidating just yesterday now held the promise of transformation. And it all began because one man had the courage to walk in dressed as himself. But the story wasn't over yet. The most powerful lesson was still to come. 6 months later, Rory Mcilroy stood at the back of the Fifth Avenue store, observing quietly as the bustle of Saturday shopping filled the space. The changes were subtle yet profound. Gone were the intimidating security guards at the entrance. Instead, a warm welcome greeted every visitor. Display signs now highlighted the artisans behind each piece, rather than just the designer name. Most importantly, staff engaged with every customer with the same attentive respect, whether they arrived in casual wear or couture. "Quite the transformation," James noted, joining Rory's observation. The numbers backed it up. Since implementing the new approach, store revenue had increased by 23%. More surprisingly, the average transaction value had risen too. It turned out that when people felt respected rather than intimidated, they were more likely to invest in truly special pieces. Sarah, now the customer experience director, approached with confidence that hadn't been there 6 months ago. "The new training program is ready to roll out to all North American locations," she reported. "And our former manager?" Rory asked. Sarah smiled. "Still here, and I have to admit, he's become one of our strongest advocates for the new approach. His team has the highest customer satisfaction scores in the company. It had been a risk, offering him a second chance, but Rory believed in redemption, both on and off the golf course. As if summoned by the conversation, the manager himself approached, now carrying himself with a different kind of confidence, one built on character rather than intimidation. "Mr. McIlroy, there's someone I think you should meet," he said, gesturing to a young man in simple jeans and a t-shirt, examining a display of watches. "That's Marcus Johnson. He's an app developer who just sold his startup. He came in last week in gym clothes, and I remembered your lesson. Today, he's back to purchase his first luxury timepiece." Rory nodded appreciatively. "Well done." The manager hesitated. "I've never properly thanked you. Most owners would have fired me on the spot, and I would have deserved it." "It's easy to discard people who make mistakes," Rory replied. "Much harder to help them grow. I've had plenty of coaches who could have given up on me after bad tournaments." They watched as a sales associate treated the young tech entrepreneur with genuine respect and enthusiasm, sharing the history of the watchmaking technique with passion rather than pretension. "You know," Rory said thoughtfully, "we never actually announced my ownership publicly." James raised an eyebrow. "The press has been asking. It would be good publicity for the brand." Rory shook his head, his blue eyes reflecting the natural light streaming through the store's massive window. "I think we've proven something far more valuable than any headline could capture," he said thoughtfully, running his finger along the edge of a display case. "This transformation was never about attaching my name to another brand. It was about redefining what luxury truly means in today's world." He paused, watching a young couple being greeted warmly by the same manager who had once judged him so harshly. "True luxury isn't built on exclusivity or making people feel small. It's crafted from exceptional experience that elevate everyone who walks through those doors, whether they're wearing sweatpants or Savile Row." As they moved toward the exit, Rory stopped before a wall that had undergone the most striking transformation. Where once hung photographs of celebrities draped in the brand's finest pieces, a wall of unattainable aspiration now displayed intimate portraits of the artisans behind each creation. There were weathered hands of an Italian leather worker, eyes focused through spectacles as needle met fabric. The concentrated expression of a watchmaker assembling a timepiece with tweezers so delicate they could lift a human hair. "This," Rory said, gesturing to the photographs, "this is the real story worth telling. These are the people who pour decades of expertise into creating something extraordinary. Their craftsmanship deserves to be celebrated more than any celebrity endorsement." "See," James nodded in agreement, understanding his client, a man who had faced the crushing pressure of global fame since his teenage years, saw something in these anonymous artisans that resonated deeply with his own journey. Outside on Fifth Avenue, the spring sunshine caught the gleam of passing cars and the hurried stride of New Yorkers. A group of tourists stopped suddenly, one pointing excitedly as he recognized the distinctive profile of the golf superstar through the store's windows. "That's Rory McIlroy!" the man exclaimed, fumbling for his phone. But inside the store, in that moment, something far more significant than celebrity had been recognized. The staff had learned to see beyond appearances, to recognize the humanity and potential in every person who entered their domain. The lesson had rippled outward, changing not just a store, but an entire corporate culture. That humiliating day 6 months ago, when a champion had been judged by his hoodie rather than his character, had ultimately created something more valuable than any product on their shelves. It had forged a legacy of respect and dignity that would outlast fashion seasons and quarterly reports. "You know," Rory said, as they finally stepped through the doorway onto the bustling sidewalk, "my father once told me something I never forgot. He said, 'How you treat people when you don't need anything from them, that's the true test of character.'" He glanced back at the store one last time, I think we're passing that test now. So the next time you feel the sting of judgment based on your appearance, remember this story. Sometimes the person in worn jeans might just own the building, but more importantly, your worth as a human being has never depended on the fabric covering your body or the brand name stitched upon it. Because in the end, the authentic measure of class has nothing whatsoever to do with clothing and everything to do with how we recognize the inherent dignity in every person we encounter.